Are you good to go?
Yeah.
Right, it's a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, those who are joining us online. Welcome to today's Election Watch press briefing. We're very sorry for the late start. This was occasioned by the fact that our venue was stormed by ZANU-PF thugs. As you can see, this is not our usual backdrop. They stole a lot of our brand property, including our banners and some of our identifying material. That notwithstanding, we're going to continue because the CCC is a movement of courage. ZANU-PF is obviously running scared because no political party that is confident that it's got the support of the people storms into a press conference to try and stop it and uses violence and steals property. I think what's even more disappointing is the fact that we've got the Zimbabwe Republic Police stationed outside. We've got, they're armed, they're in their right gear. They've also come to the venue, and yet they were unable to stop these ZANU-PF thugs. And so what we say to ZANU-PF, as we've said consistently, number one, they need to stop using violence. Number two, they must stop abusing the police service to try and silence political opponents. Number three, our constitutional right to gather, to communicate, to share our ideas, to propagate our own narratives and our values and our ideas and our plan for progress for the Zimbabwean citizens must not be impeded. We don't call ourselves change champions for nothing. We're not going to back down in as far as the 2023 election is concerned. We can see that ZANU-PF is trying to do everything it can to try and stop us from participating. That's simply not going to happen. A boycott is simply off the cards. No matter how much violence, no matter how much intimidation you use, we're going to look you in the eye. We're going to use the support of the people that we have, and we're going to continue to march forward in our fight to win Zimbabwe for change. Our change champion-in-chief, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, was very clear over the last weekend. We want elections and not war. We're not going to be sucked into a violent exchange with ZANU-PF. We don't need violence. That's how much public support we've got. We are confident that ZANU-PF can never win a free and fair election. And for that reason, we are putting all our ducks in a row to ensure that we've got all the technical competence and readiness based on the experience that we've had of the number of by-elections that have taken place since the 26th of March to ensure that we win in 2023. And so we condemn the outright unlawfulness or lawlessness that's being displayed by ZANU-PF with impunity. They are behaving like a terrorist organization. They are murderers, they're thugs, and they're violent. For our part, we reaffirm our commitment to non-violent resistance. President Nelson Chamisa, our change champion-in-chief, has consistently called for peace, and we stand by this. Our desire or our choice to resort to peaceful methods is not a sign of weakness. We make no apologies for the fact that we're not going to use violence to win in 2023. We believe that Zimbabwe is a constitutional democracy. It's guided by the principles set out in the Constitution, and that's what we're going to use to win Zimbabwe for change in 2023. We want the opportunity to save lives, not to threaten them. We're constitutionalists, and we believe in the rule of law. So the purpose of our press briefing today is to give the citizens an update on where we are in as far as preparation for the elections is concerned. There have been a number of topical issues since we launched our electoral reform blueprint Prepare, where we call for the right to vote to be fully facilitated. We call for a credible voters' roll. We call for a credible results announcement system. We call for an end to the abuse of political opponents, respect for political freedoms, access to state media is enshrined in the Constitution, and also security for the vote and for the voter. We've also called for integrity on the part of Zec, its polling, its personnel, and its processes. So with that backdrop, I'm going to defer proceedings to our elections department, who are going to just give us a brief overview of where we are. And after that, we'll field a few questions, and then we'll stop at that. But I reiterate, No amount of threats and intimidation by ZANU-PF is going to stop us as we march towards 2023. We're not afraid. We've got the championship mindset. We know that, what ZANU-PF was budgeting for at this stage is that Zimbabwe would be a one-party state. They tried to decimate the main opposition through all sorts of shenanigans and means, but we remain steadfast. We're going to continue to march in the fight to win Zimbabwe for change. Mr. Makoni.
He says fine. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Fadzi, and thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Tongai, and Henry, and welcome to you all. I really shared the thought that the headline is going to be ZANU-PF disrupts a press conference. No, we're here, and we thank you for turning up. Regardless, these are minor irritants. We meet again today to interact further in our countdown to 2023. By my inaccurate counting, we're probably in the region of 210, 230 days to the next harmonized elections. So the clock is ticking. I would like to spend the next few minutes dwelling on four issues which are important. The electoral environment, and of course what happened just before we started is a forerunner of that environment imposed by our opponents. Like also to deal with the election management body and issues that impede the delivery of free and fair elections. Then I would like to go back to the electoral reforms and the agenda implementation towards thereof. And before then dealing with the teething issues, things that are impeding us. But before I touch on these points, just a quick tour on the by-elections that have happened so far. We've had 28 parliamentary seats contested and Triple C secured 19. We had 143 local authority by-elections, and we accounted for 87 of those. Now, for a young party, that's a very good performance. And it's something that people don't normally remember, but I just wanted to paint that picture, that we have this wave that is coming. And no one other than ZANU themselves knows what will happen next year. We're ready for that. The major issues for the press revolve around the shrinking electoral environment. The Nyatsime 16, with Honorable Sikala and Honorable Sitole and 14 other party activists, have been 147 days today in incarceration without trial, causes emotional distress to their families, and we sympathize with them. But I rush to emphasize that their spirits is not being quelled at all. They remain very motivated and remain true to the struggle. So we, once again, emphasize and call upon the judiciary to separate itself from the clutches of regime. We dare not talk about a captured judiciary, but what is happening persuades us to believe that. And I would hope you as the fourth state would remain seized with the fact that you got 16 souls out there who, out of no fault of theirs, are being sacrificed so that you and I can achieve the change that we deserve. Beyond this incarceration, we've had several cases of actual violence, which are familiar to all of you. From Boneni Nube in Kwekwe, to More Blessing Ali, who is the subject matter for the present incarceration, to the graphic details which were shared on social media by none other than Honorable Tofa. I shed a tear, but a tear of anger, that they should disregard the importance of the House of Parliament and try to belittle her. The good thing, though, is that she stood firm in spite of the torture. And this is what is going to happen if ZANU-PF does not stop what they're doing. It will actually strengthen the resolve in the public. We also had other members of Parliament, Honorable Molokele, Honorable Nyoni, Honorable Pulu, viciously attacked in Matobo. And it's something that when they take stock, they should be ashamed. I had the pleasure of sending that video clip of the recording of Honorable Tofa to none other than Comrade Mutwangwa himself, not herself, because they should know. So there's nothing that we do which we don't want them to know. Not to be beaten to the shame. There are cases of old women that were brutalized in Matobo. A 75-year-old woman was brutalized. That's older than me, and I'm not young. But despite these vicious attacks, we as CCC are grateful for those people, those activists that remain persist with the struggle. And that determination is what the people of Zimbabwe want to see. So we'll continue to give that. They're on panic mode, which is why they resorted to their default of violence. But let us emphasize the point that no amount of violence that they can unleash, whether in urban areas or in rural areas, will this time shift the drift towards victory for CCC next year. I have a message for the ZRP. Reports were made of these attacks in Caesar. Reports were made of these attacks in Matobo. Reports were made of these attacks in Chirumans. Not one has been arrested. Not one. So are we not right in saying that we have a police that has been captured? We have the Chapter 12 institutions, in particular the NPRC, the Gender Commission, the Human Rights Commission, who quite frankly should be ashamed, because we've written to them, we've not had the courtesy of a response. So are we wrong in saying they're in the same basket? And lastly, there's Zec themselves. The law, section 156C of the Constitution, gives them the role to take measures and systems to eliminate election violence and other electoral malpractices. I would like Justice Chigumba to come out into the open and tell us just what those measures they are that they've done. And I would like the Chief Executive Officer of Zec to do likewise. If they cannot, then we are quite right in concluding that they are captured. We were represented in Matobo at the multi-party liaison a meeting. The police were present and all sorts of other entities were there. Zec was there. They chaired it. And to this day, they are happy to forget. Not to be undone because the regime is up to a number of tricks. For the first time, we have had in this series of by-elections, a candidate who could not file their nomination papers, giving the impression that ZANU-PF was not challenged. They were challenged. There were 3 people that were forced to withdraw not to submit their nomination papers under fear of death. We have a woman, Mrs. Conte, who filed a police report. There's a CR number, CR 13/12/22. That docket has yet to make its way from the police camp to Mutoko police station so that an investigation officer may be appointed. Is that fun? So what we're saying, in other words, is that notwithstanding all these obstacles, the message to Zimbabweans is we are in this ring to win. Let's turn to the delimitation process, which is underway. We have told Zec that a delimitation process that is not underlined by the voters' roll is null and void. At this stage, they've issued the constituency registered vote totals. They've issued, to a certain extent, some ward totals, but where it matters, which is the nexus for drawing constituency and ward boundaries, is the polling areas, the boundaries of those polling stations. Now, how are you going to tell where the boundaries should be if you don't know how many people are registered in a particular polling area? That is what we're up against. I hope we don't get to a stage where we must campaign that the delimitation report should be discarded, and that we are rather better working on the basis of current boundaries than what is fabricated. So what we are saying is, until the voters' roll is made available down to the polling station, we haven't even begun delimitation. What we're saying is that voters' roll should be made available under the prescription of the law, i.e., it must be auditable. We must be able to search for names. Oh, but what do they say? No, we can only release a hard copy voters' roll at $1 a page. It's now common news that now, when you add up the total number of pages, it works out at 187,000 pages. So it's $187,000. I haven't got that. So who is kidding who? I hear that one comrade among our opponents has also added his word to the fact that the voters' roll must be made available at a price that is affordable. And I hope they mean it. Because if they mean it, then for once, we're saying the same thing. Let me turn to another interesting issue, and that is the methodology of delimitation itself. We insist on the various tiers of delimitation, meeting and agreeing. The national level, the provincial level, the ward level, and what we hear are harrowing stories that a certain minister whose name is not mentioned in the act, let alone the constitution, is vetoing the number of wards which we as councillors, because I'm a councillor in Harare, which as councillors, but in terms of the law, we're entitled to make suggestions. On what authority does the minister or the Ministry of Local Government have to insist that the number of wards for Harare, as an example, should be maintained at 46 and not at the 55 that we've put forward? And I hope that Zec has heard us loud and clear, and that they will give us an opportunity as councillors of Harare to explain our way. Not to mention the fact that whereas the law has been complied with respect to constituencies, that is 5.8 million registered voters divided by 210, getting you 227,600 and a bit as an average number of registered voters per constituency, plus 20% up and down. That means that every constituency throughout the country is given the same chance, the same number of voters. So it is within that range, whether one agrees with the law or one does not agree with the law. But that is the law. But when it comes to wards, we are made to believe that a councillor for Harare must look after more voters than a councillor for Goromonzi, rural and urban. It therefore means that there's no equality of voters or equality among voters, and that is not constitutional. So these are issues that we've made known to Zec. These are issues that will continue to drum up, because if we don't agree on the equality of voters, be it at parliamentary level or at local authority level, then we're in our view acting outside of the constitution. We've also heard that in Bulawayo, for instance, a constituency called Makogoba, those that are familiar, it's been made up out of adding up a number of disparate pieces. Now, the constitution is very clear as to what characteristics should be taken into account, and those appear to have been discarded. So the net result is that when eventually we draw up the map of Makogoba, it will be worse than the gerrymander. So we have gerrymandering at play. Those of us that are aware of the evil that it is. Let me turn to electoral reforms. You've already been told that we have a prepared document, and Fazai has already gone through. That was so quickly off her fingers, the 7 of them. I won't repeat them because I'll get them wrong. But on the 4th of October, we had advised that a cabinet approved in principle to an electoral reform bill. What the elements in that reform bill, we don't know. Now, if our experience, our memories are correct, whenever you go for such a fundamental change, you must have public hearings. There'll be no public hearings. And the message we're putting across is that if the stakeholders, if the public are not involved in processes towards amendment of that electoral act, then it is not their act, it is a ZANU act. And the point should therefore be made in no uncertain terms. What do we suggest should happen? We know that Zesny prepared a draft bill. We know that various other organizations have also drafted an amendment bill. We as Triple C have also done the same. Wouldn't it make a lot of sense that there is an opportunity where all these submissions are considered carefully by stakeholders so that there is ownership towards the end result, and we can go into an election that we can all support. That is what we are suggesting. And as I come towards the end, I'd like to paint the picture that the telltale signs are not good for a free and fair elections. The resolve in Triple C is unshaken to continue with this struggle, non-violent struggle, until we have democratic elections in this land. So therefore, it is better for all of us, particularly ZANU-PF, to get that message that don't waste the country's time by putting up obstacles which are makeshift. It's like putting up an illegal roadblock, which is soon dismantled. This is all there is to it. So I would like to finish off by suggesting that there are more stakeholders in this country than just political parties. There are more stakeholders in this country which include our traditional leaders that are being abused. The churches, I hear the attempts to abuse them as well. Civil servants who are being abused. And even the police, for not arresting perpetrators of violence, they are being abused. We're in this struggle together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makone, for that very detailed report. As you can see, we're on the ground. We are the only competent alternative to ZANU-PF. We're the only alternative political movement that's actually participating in this election process, that's actually paying attention to what's being done with Zec, that's actually following up on the voters' roll, that's actually standing up to ZANU-PF, looking it in the eye and saying, look, we're going to continue. And obviously, it behoves us all to thank all the change champions throughout the entire country, all of those who are running Mugwazo campaigns, which is our flagship rural mobilization program, Urban Grassroots. Thank you to all the change champions who are sacrificing their time, their energy, their resources in the face of great dangers. And I think, our change champion in chief said just this morning that when we win, we do so against all odds. Even at the thank you rally in Lima that was conducted this weekend, he said, the fact that, in a rural ward that's been held by ZANU-PF since 1980, the fact that we can win there tells us in no uncertain terms that the citizens are ready for change and they're ready to do what it takes. So without saying very much more, I'm going to just open the floor up to a few questions. As usual, please raise your hand, identify yourself and which news house you're from, and we'll take your question as appropriate. Yes, sir.
Zec is telling us that there are two options for anyone to get the copies of the voters' roll, either the hard copy, which is for that fee that you have told us,
yes,
and even for the electronic copy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any of those copies by now?
Okay, I'm going to.
Because they have said for the electronic copy it's just 200 baht. I'm not sure if you guys now have that copy.
Okay, so I'll defer to our elections champion and then I'll chime in.
Yeah. Look, I can tell you, if anyone has got it, please let me have one.
So
they come invisible. They said that you can buy a hard copy today, which means from the day of their announcement, if we had $187,000, it will still be the middle of November of December before we could have the physical copy. By that time, the delimitation process will be just about over. So it's just an empty thing. As for the electronic copy at 200, it's nice to say 200. Even now they've begged, stolen, and borrowed to buy the electronic version, except they are saying they are still doing certain features on that website portal, such that you can just search one name at a time. That does not allow you to audit. Imagine if you had to audit the entire population, 5.8 million, one person at a time. In this day and age of technology, it's as good as saying you can't have it.
Can I just
Sure.
make a slight addition to that? If you look at the Electoral Act, the Act is very clear. Yes, Zec is correct to say that you have an option of either the electronic copy or the printed copy of the voter's roll. But that option is incumbent upon the person who wants to purchase the voter's roll. So it is up to us to say, no, we want the electronic copy or the printed copy of the voter's roll, and of which we, as the CCC, we requested the electronic copy of the voter's roll. And this is what we are entitled to according to the Electoral Act. And also, given, even if you look at the cost of the voter's roll, our Electoral Act is very clear when it comes to that. The cost of the voter's roll should not exceed the cost of production. You talk of the $200, not even the $187,000 that they want. The $200. The voter's roll is given to us in a disc, and that disc costs $1 for 4, and because they are supposed to pay $200. So really, this is why, as much as one, there is the challenge to say in terms of the cost element, but also in terms of the format. The format we are supposed to have is the format of the voter's roll, which is searchable and which is analyzable. So this is why we want the voter's roll, the delimitation voter's roll, so that we are able to actually play around with the figures to check in terms of, the voter populations in the respective polling areas, in the respective wards. How are they, structured, so that at least we are able to make projections in terms of the outcomes of the delimitation processes. So this is where we are in terms of the voters' roll. We are entitled to either the electronic or the printed copy, but that discretion is up to us as the stakeholders.
Right. To just put the matter to bed on the voters' roll, our demand for the voters' roll is non-negotiable. In fact, it's not up to Zec or ZANU-PF to decide whether or not we get a voters' roll. It's a constitutional imperative. And the Constitution and our electoral law don't just say give us any old list of names and call it a voters' roll. It has to be a voters' roll that's transparent and verifiable. If you look at all the rolls we received, even during the by-election process, we continuously pointed to defects to Zec. We pointed out the fact that a number of people had been moved unilaterally, a number of people didn't feature on the voters' roll. Everybody remembers what happened on the 26th of March, where you got to the polling station, you looked for your name on the roll, and it simply wasn't there. And yet we've got an electoral law that's very clear that every single political party must have access to the voters' roll, with names, with photographs. That's what the law says. Now, why is it that every single election cycle, we have to be having the same demand over and over again with the electoral management body? Why can't they just comply with the Constitution? Now, we've already launched litigation to sue them for the voters' roll mandamus, to get an interdict, to compel them to comply with the law. But as a constitutional commission, they really ought to know better. We are sick and tired of the gaslighting. We know that ZANU-PF is afraid of an election. That's why they don't want us to get our hands onto the voters' roll. In other countries, take Kenya for example, you've got an independent audit by KPMG of the voters' roll. Why are they afraid of that? Why are they putting the cost so high that nobody can get their hands onto it? Elections are not for sale. We said that when they raised the cost of nomination fees, that you cannot make a voter's roll cost $200,000 almost, the cost of a whole house. How does that become a free and fair election? How does the right to vote get realized in such conditions? And what we know without a doubt is that ZANU-PF is trying to tinker with the numbers. They don't want the delimitation process to be transparent. That's why they want to divorce the two important processes of releasing the voters' roll from delimitation. Give us that voters' roll today so that we can now analyze what you've done in as far as delimitation and see whether it tallies with what we've got on the voters' roll. What is Zec afraid of? I challenge Jasper Mangwana every single time he's called to an electoral debate on this issue, he runs away. Zec can't answer all the questions we've put to them in as far as the voters' roll is concerned. And what Councillor Makone didn't say is that we've written to Zec not once, not twice, setting out, number one, the legal provisions that compel them to release the voters' roll. And secondly, the fact that that voters' roll is simply not available, and that's not acceptable. An electronic voters' roll should not take time, because that's the basis upon which they produce the hard copy. So you can't tell us that one is available and one is not. And we've demanded both. To answer your question directly, we've received nothing from Zec, and we will continue to demand an election. We don't want to go to an election without a voters' roll that's transparent, that's verifiable, that's credible, because that's the only way we can have a free and fair election. And we're saying it now, before the election year has even started, because we are not letting go of our demand. And we're going to continue to mount political pressure. For now, it's polite correspondence. We've escalated slightly to litigation. We don't want to get to a point where citizens have to exercise their Section 59 rights to mount political pressure on Zec to make them do their job. That's constitutionally mandated of them. Right, we'll take the next question. Sorry, we're going to take someone else. We're going to take someone else so that other people can get a chance as well. Yes.
Thank you. Leo from newsblog.com. You have said that without the voters' roll, without electoral reforms, without the state respecting your freedom to assembly or of assembly, you are still going to take part. You are not going to get down out of this election. Should Zimbabwe brace for a repeat of 1 August or just after 1 August, when the opposition declared that this election is a nullity and refused to acknowledge presidency of Emerson Mnangagwa?
Okay, so to put the matter to bed, firstly, no political party, no electoral management board, neither Zec nor ZANU-PF have the power to take away the citizens' right to vote. And we certainly aren't going to do that. This is something that's guaranteed of us from the Constitution. Now, the Constitution also sets out what the correct parameters for a free and fair election are. And everything that we've demanded in the Prepare Pact is nothing that the CCC is making. It's all constitutionally provided for. Respecting the right to vote, providing the voters' roll, making sure that everybody is safe, stopping this vote buying, making sure everyone has access to media freedoms, making sure that everyone's safe and secure. These are all very basic issues. Why is ZANU-PF afraid of that? Now, it's not for us at this stage to say that the election won't be free and fair. What we are saying to ZANU-PF is that we demand a free and fair election. We don't want another disputed election, because the people that suffer at the end of the day are the citizens. While politicians politic as ZANU is doing and resort to violence and food buying and these very short-term solutions, it's the citizens that are suffering. And everybody, if you just look into your own pocket, if you look at your own state of affairs at home, all the suffering, public hospitals, public education, it's the citizens that suffer. We want to put an end to that. And I think already a lot of the long-term monitoring bodies have already pointed to the fact that we're going to have difficulties as we approach the next election. You'll recall what was said by Owen Rube, I believe it was, and ZANU-PF, that they want this election to be bloodier than 2008. Now, what kind of political party that believes that it's got popular support says something like that? They're running scared. They're scared of the people. We're saying, no, let this just be a free and fair election. If the people vote in a free and fair environment and ZANU-PF wins, we know it won't, so be it. But if the CCC wins, respect that. If you don't, we've already made contact with the regional bodies or the electoral, international mechanisms to make sure that there is the monitoring of that process. And I think if you listen to some of the noises that have been made, a lot of people are already concerned. And so it's in ZANU-PF's interest. We are a party of peace. For us to just do things properly, constitutionally, have a free and fair vote, allow the CCC to participate without any of that longhand, shorthand business, this violence, this intimidation we're seeing from Chirumanzu to Gutu. This morning received reports from Gutu, from Gweru, that there's been more political violence because our mobilizers are on the ground. And ZANU-PF, we know how they behave when their backs are against the wall. So we're saying, ZANU-PF, do the right thing. Zec, do the right thing. Just comply with the Constitution. We're not even asking to be favored. We don't need to be favored. We've got popular support, but let's just do things properly. What kind of country, 42 years after independence, is struggling just to hold a plebiscite? Isn't that what they fought the war for? One man, one vote. One woman, one vote. How is it that 42 years after the war, we're still fighting for the same thing, still shedding blood for politics? It really should stop. Zimbabweans deserve better. Yes.
Yeah, Desmond Mulemo, Asimai. So we've seen evidence of vote buying around the country, intimidation and violence, which you've just recently witnessed. Is peace and referring to constitution going to guarantee a free and fair election? Or was
So the position of the CCC as a movement is peace is non-negotiable. And we're not moving on that. Advocate Nelson Chamisa, our change champion-in-chief, just a couple of days ago said we're not moving from that position, regardless of how much ZANU-PF tries to provoke us and tries to bait us with violence. We're not going to play that game. We do make no apologies for the fact that as part of our value system, the rule of law, respect for the rule of law and constitutionalism are central. The only means we want to use to take power are constitutional democratic means. And yes, we believe it can work. Why should it work in other jurisdictions? Why should Zimbabweans be denied the choice to decide who leads them? Zimbabweans continuously say we want new leaders. Why aren't they allowed to pick those new leaders? And so we are standing firm on that. And the Constitution has our back on that. And citizens also just want the opportunity to cast that vote and have that vote count. So we're saying no to violence. And for the avoidance of doubt, the reason ZANU-PF is resorting to violence is because they know they're losing. Whenever they're on a losing track, look at 2008, look clearly at the markers that were there. When they can see with their own intelligence that they're losing, this is what they do. How do you disrupt a press conference in the center of Harare using violence? It clearly shows you that they've got a problem, especially in rural areas where they used to sell the myth that they're a stronghold. Why are they beating people up? Why are they burning homes? Why are they killing people? Why are they threatening people with death? It's because they're losing and the CCC is gaining ground. They thought that they would get rid of Advocate Nelson Chamisa and there'd be nothing left for the election in 2023, and they've been shocked and surprised that we are still standing. And so we push for a peaceful election in 2023. I think we'll take just 2 more questions and then we'll move forward. Okay, I'm advised that ZANU-PF youths have gathered. Don't worry, we're not scared. We're not going to run. If journalists run, that's something else, but we're not running away. They've regrouped downstairs and they want violence. We're a party of peace. We're not going to be sucked into those games. They took out banners, but guess what? It's not the banner that does the press conference. So long as we're able to share our message, that's all that's important.
I hope they brought back the banner.
Yeah, we want our banner back. Now, just one more question and then we'll all be able to disperse and go back. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm patient, a freelance. My question is the safety of women. Because yes, you have mentioned that ZANU-PF is doing things to women in terms of violence. But then what in terms of women's safety against violence?
Thank you, Patience. That's a very good question. Now, you know, the message that ZANU-PF has clearly sent to the citizens is that they've got no respect for women. I'm sure we all saw in Matabele and what happened with those elderly women who were stripped of their clothes by ZANU-PF gangs and ZANU-PF youths and made to walk naked. We also saw what happened to Honorable Jasmine Tofa, an honorable member of parliament who's stripped, who's beaten, who's got broken ribs, broken limbs, all because ZANU-PF doesn't respect women. And you know, all the data tells us that women participation in politics is declining because of this attitude of violence by ZANU-PF. So we call upon them once again, please make sure you respect women in the political space. But more importantly, to the constitutional commissions, we've got a gender commission. Why are they silent? We're supposed to have a human rights commission. Why are they silent? We've got Zec that is meant to administer the electoral code of conduct. Why are they silent? Most importantly, we've got a Zimbabwe Republic police that's supposed to secure property and person. Why are they silent? How can you let women get beaten up? Councillor Makone has just expressed the fact that we made police reports time and again. Nothing has been done. There's been no justice for Mo Blessing Ali. Where are the convictions? You can hold Honorable Job Sikala for 147 days, but where's the perpetrator of the murder self-confessed murderer of Mboneni Ncube, the person who murdered Mo Blessing Ali when the police were jumping around saying it's not ZANU-PF. All these people are known. The perpetrators who beat who beat citizens up in Matobo and in Caesar, all of these people are known. Where are the arrests? And so we call for a return to the rule of law, because that's the only way women in politics can be safe. And to our friends in ZANU-PF, please make sure you stop beating women up. That is a sign of weakness. That is a sign that you've already lost before we start. So I think without further ado, we call on all young people, register to vote. Voting is our only chance. If voting didn't work, ZANU-PF would not be investing all its power, all its energy, deploying violence to try and stop the election. They know that voting works. They know that if the citizens come out in their millions to win big, as our change champion in chief has said, that they're in big trouble. So let's make sure we register to vote and make sure that we fight to win the fight to win Zimbabwe for change. Thank you.
Thank you.